So, Victoria, I'm going to turn to you. Both Ted and Kathy have alluded to the fact that teachers and students want this kind of learning environment and experience, and that policies and sort of the decisions that policymakers are made are constraining them. What was your experience? What sparked your work in the New Hampshire legislature to develop the play-based kindergarten bill? And how do you expect that it will change how teachers are trained and what classrooms look like in kindergartens across the state?
I first want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I will tell you, my children are 2 years apart. They're teenagers now, so this was way back. They were kindergartners. And in the 2-year difference between my older child and my younger child, the difference that I saw as a classroom parent in education was dramatic. They had the same teacher, same school, same kindergarten classroom, and it had changed dramatically from in my older son's class. They did a play during the year, and there was a lot of guided reading, and they got outside almost every day. And then my younger child, they didn't have time for the play. There was more, sitting time, and it was a privilege if they got to go outside. And the teacher became a good friend of mine, and her frustration being a longtime kindergarten teacher and what was happening was coming through. And it was difficult for the kindergarten teachers to sort of take on this new role. And we kept hearing about rigorous standards when I was in the education committee, rigorous standards for kindergarten. And I thought, my God, why are we talking about rigor and kindergarten in the same sentence? Does anybody else see red flags here? Is it just me? So I started to do a lot of research on it and realized that this wasn't a problem in my child's school or even in our community. This was happening everywhere. And, there were articles about, is kindergarten the new first grade? And then there were all kinds of articles about how disruptive kindergarten had become because children can't be expected to sit for long periods of time at that age. And I will tell you, the first year that I put in the bill, it was not received well. That's really an understatement. It was not received well at all. And that was sometimes by former teachers who were in the legislature who didn't understand the change that had happened. They thought that, I didn't know what I was talking about. Of course, kindergarten is play, because they weren't in the classroom to see the drastic changes. But it was through the conversations that we continued to have after the bill failed. They got people to be more aware and gave teachers, I think, the empowerment to start speaking up, saying, hey, this is actually happening and we really need some help here. So I did engage teachers and administrators when I wrote the bill. And the second time around, it passed our committee unanimously. It passed the House. I think it was 357 to 8. It struggled a little bit more in the Senate, which happens, but we got it through. So anybody that's trying to work on this, I just want to say, keep at it. But we did have a little bit of pushback from teachers too, who were tired of the legislature telling them how to run a classroom. They had been so restricted in what they could do, and they had really lost a lot of control. That when I was, when this did become law, and I did speak to teachers and said, no, the intent is to give your classroom back to you. The whole intent is to give you back through creativity that, you want to bring to your teaching. And I think that now with UNH has embraced the preschool development grant and has been a great partner to get coaching into the classrooms. And each kindergarten teacher that we coach becomes an advocate for play. And they start to, teach other teachers about how this is done. And we really had to rely on, in some cases, older teachers, because new teachers aren't learning this way. So these conversations are so important. Having people in the field like Kathy out there talking, because she came and she spoke in New Hampshire for us once, and addressed the teachers, and letting them know that they have the support in this is really important.
So let me ask a difficult question, because a few of the people in the audience have submitted questions around, this all sounds great, but how do you get this to be scaled? How do you get policymakers, administrators, and teachers on board? And I know you struggled, we mentioned a little bit, but tell us more about what you learned in the process.
So I've been contacted by legislators in different states who want to pick up the wording of our bill and get it into their states. They've been working at it. Of course, COVID interrupted a lot of things, including their work. But I will briefly read you the language of the bill. It's very easy. and it's very small, so I need my cheaters. Standards for kindergarten shall be play-based and have the following components: movement, expression, exploration, socialization, and music. Literacy shall be developed through guided reading, and there shall be unstructured time for discovery of each child's individual talents, ability, and needs. And that was, as believe me, people tried to muddy it up a little bit and make it more complicated, but we fought really hard to keep it simple. And with those standards, that gives the teachers so much room in their classroom to make it what they want it to be. And so you really have to engage all the stakeholders. You need to educate parents. Like I said, the bill didn't go through the first time, but it gave us the opportunity to educate people as to why it was important, and getting parents on board to understand that it's not just play, it's education through play. They're actually learning, and they're learning better, and they're learning in a way that actually impacts them for a longer period of time. And so once you get parents to be advocates for play, then then you've got the teachers. You got to get teachers on board too, but most teachers are. And then the parents talking to the administrators really need to be on board. And when we're talking about assessments, we need to change the way we think about those two. It's not always a paper assessment that we need to have. My intention is to make this kindergarten bill be actually K through 3. I would love to see K through 3 and have it expand. But we really need to support the teachers on the ground and let them know that for the administrators, a chatty room with movement in it is a positive thing. It doesn't mean that the teacher doesn't have control over the classroom, and educating parents that this is really an important way for their children to learn, and just get all the stakeholders on the same page. So education, which is again why this is so important, education is the biggest component of getting this to work across our nation.
Sure. What can we as citizens do to get policymakers and decision makers to pay attention to this and to really do the kind of work you did when you were a representative?
They should look to New Hampshire, because New Hampshire is leading in this. But you really need buy-in. Our Commissioner of Education, our Deputy Commissioner of Education have been all in on this. Like I said, UNH has partnered with us, and it's really about getting out and educating all of the stakeholders about how important this is and really what the payoff is down the road. I mean, this is really important work that we're doing. You say play, and people all of a sudden start to think, well, they're not learning anything. And that's really our task, is to educate people in knowing that that is the best way that children learn, and they will get the most out of being taught that way.